Beep. Beep. We have returned! With voice cracking, apparently. Alright. Let's see. Yep, chapter 4. Oh god, we just started chapter 4. I think this is skipping territory. April 1867. Yeah, this is skipping territory. This is where we confront Kaoru. Da da da. I think Okita is usually paired with Heisuke on rounds. I think. I could be wrong. Hi, Kaoru. We're gonna confront you and ask you, hey, were you involved in the cutting down of the signboard? Hey, Okita. And Okita is suffering from coughing. If we don't know what it is already, then you've missed out a lot. I still say the proper order to do any route when you're starting this game is Okita first, and then Kazuma, and then whatever you choose. That's how I feel you should play this game anyway. Because if you know something already from this game, I feel like it doesn't do Okita's justice, because you already know. Oh, right, the Fury. I don't think this scene changes at all. I think my brain was pulling tricks on me anyway. So this should be the same. We get cut by the Fury, and then we try to call for help because Okita told us to stop being timid. Help! And... it's Ishikata who responds first. As always. And then comes the Baka Trio! And that Fury is dead. And Ito woke up being useless and found out secrets, and then Sun and Sun appears. Who should be dead, but isn't. Oh no. Am I making sense? I don't know. And we keep going. Last 9, and then we're gonna go see that our wound is healed, because we have fast healing. And then I don't want to hear the matane. I guess I have to, don't I? Saito and Heisuke, what are you guys doing so early in the morning?
そりゃあれだけのことがあった後、のんびり寝ていられるほど無神経ではありませんわ。雪村くん、怪我をしていたでしょ?
Oops. Well, it's not that bad.
そう。それは何よりですわね。
Huh? His mood was almost the polar opposite of the previous night. He seemed now to be in rather high spirits. Ito-san, has something happened?
知りたい? 教えてあげない。ま、だいたい想像はついてるかもしれないけど。ねえ、東堂くん、斉藤くん。
What? I cocked an eyebrow to Heisuke and Saito.
まあな。
The moment our eyes met, he looked away. Hi! Dan. Hi, Dan. That seemed odd. Saito-san?
今は知る必要はないということだ。
Unlike his companions, Saito-san met my gaze straight on, but his eyes were flat and utterly devoid of any emotion. Which I suppose isn't weird for Saito, because it's Saito. Things are fine. We got charity event tonight, though. And I'm afraid what might happen, because we got some incentives. It was as if he put up a wall.
なんだ。別れの挨拶にしちゃちとそっけなさすぎないか?
It involves me singing, so if we get anything, I'm scared.
それとも実はこんなところからはさっさと出て行きたいってのが本音なのか?
Get out of here?
サブロー、余計なことは言わなくてもよろしくてよ。それでは、私たちはもう行きますわ。
それではな、雪村。またな。
Oh no, not the matana again. And then they were gone, leaving me wondering just what had happened. Okay, now we can skip this. All of this, we know what happens. They left. They're leaving us! Because Ito's using this information as blackmail and to get away from the Shinsengumi. At least to break us apart somewhat. Alright, so we're worried about the guard. What worried me most were the people leaving with Ito. Oh god. That's fine. That's alright. Not like you can't watch it later or anything. Heisuke and Saito-san. Would I ever get to see them again? Was this goodbye? I wanted to know what they were thinking. Were they still around? As I stood up to go look for them, I spotted Yamazaki walking towards me.
Yukimura-kun.
I don't delete the VODs, no. They delete themselves after a week. So you got a week. Oh, Yamazaki-san.
昨晩怪我をしたそうだな。傷の具合はどうなんだ？
大丈夫。Have you seen Heisuke and Saito-san?
東堂さんと斎藤さんか。
Oh my god. So I like how here Yamazaki says Todo-san, even though Heisuke is like, hey, everybody can just call me Heisuke. No honorifics or anything, just Heisuke. But Yamazaki's like, I'm still gonna refer to you as Todo. His expression turned grim at the mention of their names. Heisuke. It was quite clear how he felt about the men who'd chosen to leave the Shinsengumi with Ito-san. Sorry for asking. I turned quickly to leave, but he held out a hand to stop me.
境内だ。向こうに行くのをさっき見かけた。
Thanks!
話をするなら早い方がいい。
Yamazaki's the best boy. He helps us out so many times, I can't.
彼らがここを出た後は、それすらも許されなくなるからな。
That left should be leave. Oh, god damn it, Dan! God damn it. There they were. Heisuke! Saito-san! They turned around with reserved expressions.
やっぱ捕まっちまったか。
Oh, did you want to be left alone? I can go.
んなことないって。俺もちゃんと話したいって思ってたからさ。
Good.
やはり来たか。話があるなら早く済ませてくれ。
Right. I just wanted to hear it from you. Why are you leaving? Why are you leaving the Shinsengumi?
理由か。
He scrunched up his face and scratched nervously at the side of his nose.
伊藤さんは同じ流派の先輩だし、昔から知ってるしさ。あの人が新選組に入ったのは、俺が誘ったのがきっかけだったんだし。だから、一緒に行動する義務があるんじゃねえかなって、そう思ったんだよ。
Heisuke had always struck me as kind, so it was no surprise that he felt he couldn't abandon Ito-san. But that means you'll leave everyone else behind. You might not ever get to see them again.
いきなり分派って言われて、俺もちょっと動揺してるところはあるんだけどさ。
Oh. Wait, so Heisuke was always an imperialist? Eh? I feel like I missed that somewhere and it flew over my fucking head. I didn't know that.
けど俺、もともと幕府に尽くしたいって思ってたわけじゃねえし。例の薬のこととかいろいろ考えると、伊藤さんが言う御領英治の方が合ってる気がするんだ。
I couldn't really think of anything to say, so I kept my mouth shut. After a moment, he continued.
俺だって本当はみんなとずっとバカ騒ぎしてたかったさ。
Bye, Dad.
だって江戸にいた頃から今までずっと一緒だったもんな。
His gaze drifted off into the distance, and his profile seemed almost heartbreakingly lonely. But his mouth was a hard line. His mind was made up. What about you, Saito-san? I looked up at him.
自らの志に合うと感じて伊藤派に属することに決めた。
Are you an imperialist too?
征夷大将軍というのは本来夷敵を排するためにある役職。害意を払うという本分を忘れた幕府に尽くす道理はあるまい。
So, you're saying that Kono-san and Hijikata-san are wrong?
そうだ。
And because you don't agree with them, you're willing to walk away and never see them again?
それもやむを得んだろう。己の志を貫くためには情などに頓着するべきではない。
But I wanted them to stay. Are you sure you won't change your mind? Stay here with the Shinsengumi? I can't be the only person who doesn't want you to go. We all like you. Aren't the Shinsengumi your friends? I knew they had their reasons to go, but I had my own reasons, and I wanted them to stay. There was still time. If I could just convince them, make them understand, then they wouldn't have to go away. Please, Heisuke, Saito-san.
言わないでくれって。俺たちだって昨日今日決めたわけじゃねえんだからさ。
話はそれだけか。ならば俺はもう行かせてもらう。
Oh god, hearing that from Saito hurts a lot. Are you sure? But if you go, then you might have to fight the Shinsengumi someday.
言ったはずだ。志の前では情など無用のものだと。
Saito-san. But his mind was made up. There was nothing I could say to change it.
強いよな、はじめくんは。
His eyes followed Saito-san as he walked away. Do you feel the same way? Can you just forget about your feelings? Would it be so easy for you to fight your friends?
俺はそういうのは。
He screwed up his face in frustration. Heisuke was honest and straightforward, but he didn't have a way with words the way some of the other men did.
なあ、ちょっと中庭の方に行ってみないか。
He wasn't avoiding my question precisely. Perhaps he wanted to buy some time to think about his response. Alright, let's go.
すっかり暖かくなったな。
He lifted his face to the sky for a moment. It was a cool, clear blue, and warm rays of sunlight washed down at us. What? It was a cool, clear blue sky, and warm rays of sunlight washed down on us.
ちょっと座ろうぜ、そこ。
I lowered myself down next to him.
なんかさ、みんなは伊藤さんのことを嫌ってるけど、俺はさ、伊藤さんの言うことが全部間違ってるとは思えねえんだ。このまま幕府の言う通りに働いても 正直言って先はねえと思う。幕府のお偉いさん方は俺たちのことを使い捨ての駒としか思ってねえだろうし。
I'm sure he's not. Considering the serum and everything else. I don't blame them for questioning and having concerns about the shogunate. But not wrong and trustworthy are two very different things. Was he really worth leaving the Shinsengumi? I wonder if he's thinking that joining Ito will turn out better for him than staying with Kondo-san.
伊藤さんからいろんな話を聞いたんだ。幕府のお偉いさん方がどれだけ腐ってるか、今の日本がどんなに危ねえ状況に置かれてるか。もちろん伊藤さんが言ってることが全部正しいとは俺も思ってねえよ。伊藤さんも伊藤さんでなんか考えがあるんだろうってことも分かってるし。
Then...
でもさ、昨べの伊藤さんの様子を見て俺改めて思ったんだ。同じ志を持って入隊してきた仲間を薬の実験の道具にしたり、そのことを他の大使に隠したりするのはどう考えてもおかしいって。いつの間にか俺もみんなもそれが当たり前だと思うようになっちまってたけどさ。でも一つだけ分かってくれよ。俺はみんなのことが嫌いになったわけじゃねえから。
Oh.
それだけは嘘じゃねえからさ。
I understand where Heisuke is coming from. I was sure he had spent a lot of time thinking over all of this, maybe even stressing over it. If, after all of that internal deliberation, this was how he felt, I'd want him to honor it, but... I know, I wanted you to... I wanted to stay with you longer, Heisuke.
ありがとうな。そう言ってくれて嬉しいよ。そりゃあ俺だってお前と離れるのが寂しくねって言ったら嘘になるけど。だけどよ、行くって決めたんだ。俺だって男だからさ。
I could clearly tell he was wavering. Pushing my feelings on him, I knew would only trouble him. I understand, Heisuke. So I wasn't the only one who would feel the loneliness of being apart then. In some strange way, that made me happy.
今までありがとうな。
Thank you for telling me how you really feel. I appreciate it.
よかった。お前にだけはちゃんと伝えておきたかったんだ。
I felt like our conversation had lifted a huge burden on Heisuke, and his bright smile returned.
それとごめんな。
Huh?
お前の親父さん見つけるまで付き合ってやれなくて。
No, it's alright. Don't worry about it. Just be careful, Heisuke.
ああ、分かってる。無駄に命を捨てるような真似はしねえさ。約束するって。
My wound healed completely soon afterwards, but I kept the bandages on. I didn't want anyone to see that my scar had healed. Since Ito, Heisuke, and Sato-san all left, the compounds felt so much larger and emptier. Around the same time, Takeda, one of the captains of the Shinsengumi, had also left. I guess these are things we can't help, but... It felt as if everyone was going in different directions, off to forge their own paths. I couldn't help but feel sad about it. Next. I know. Yep, we're doing this. We're skipping. We know Sen has come to take us and explain everything. Which means I get to drink more water. I remembered what the yes was for. Keep going. We're telling her yes. And she accepts her answer. And then we get to skip all this until towards. We go outside. Shimada, I'm sorry. They're after me. If I go outside of the compounds, then I won't cause any more trouble to anyone. To everyone. No, Shimada! If they find out that I'm not here anymore, they may leave. All right. Shimada and I left my room, attempting to leave the compounds from the back. Suddenly, I thought I saw something fly past me. Then, it seems like Shimada noticed it too. Then once more, his large body was flung high through the air. Shimada's body was smashed against the wall. Shimada! I tried to run up to him, but then... Oh, hi, Yamagiri.
本意ではありませんが、これ以上お遊びに時間を割きたくはないもので。
I tried to escape, but it was...
無駄なことを。
He finished our thought. He came from behind and bound my hands before putting his hands over my mouth. I desperately tried to shake him off, but he held me down with all of his weight and power, so I couldn't even budge. Where was he taking me? He moved unhindered to the back entrance. The rest of the Shinsengumi had been drawn off by the commotion elsewhere. I could hear the clang of swords from somewhere nearby, but I couldn't see anything. Perhaps if I cried out. Hijikata-san and the men may hear me, but since he was covering my mouth, I wasn't even able to scream.
おとなしくしていてください。そうすれば、もう誰も傷つけずに済みます。我々の目的は君を捕らえることであって、誰かを傷つけることではないのですから。
I saw Shimada's limp body, crumpled at the base of the pillar, and bit my lip. What should I do? Scream! Amagiri was courteous enough, but I couldn't trust him. He broke into the temple to kidnap me, hardly the actions of an honorable man. If I let him take me, I didn't think I'd ever escape. Amagiri was carrying me under his arm and had come to the main street. Although the street was normally bustling with activity during afternoons, it was quiet now. Help me! Anybody! I hoped with all my heart that someone would hear me and maybe even run to my aid.
何を?
He moved to cover my mouth, but it was too late.
なんだ? 今の声、まさか?
Heisuke! I can't believe Heisuke is here. I felt surprised, but immediately thankful for this unbelievably good luck.
お前、何やってるんだよ、こんなところで。
Heisuke, please help me!
てめえは池田屋にいた。
Heisuke took out his sword and pointed it towards Amagiri.
こんなところで会えるとは思わなかったぜ。お前には借りがあったよな。
あいにく覚えがありません。何か貸していましたか?
Oof. There was nothing mocking in his tone, only perfectly honest confusion. He had no idea what Heisuke was talking about. Unfortunately, that only made Heisuke angrier.
忘れたとは言わせねえぜ。池田屋でてめえにつけられたこの額の傷をよ。
なるほど。あの時の方でしたか。元気そうで何よりです。
はっ、余裕だな。今度こそ負けねえからな。
Oof. Heisuke's sword shot out in a strike a normal swordsman would never be able to parry, let alone avoid, but Amagiri dodged it easily.
なんだって。
無駄なことはやめましょう。あなたの実力はあの時からさして成長したようには見えません。
うるせえ。こちとら諦めが悪いのが取り柄なんだよ。
He brought his sword down in a powerful chop, then jerked it back up in a second strike.
愚かなことを。
Amagiri dodged both. Heisuke swiftly made distance, and they faced one another again.
くそ、なんで当てられねえんだよ。
The reason he was so frustrated wasn't because he was missing, it was because he couldn't hit Amagiri without possibly hitting me as well. I was keeping him from doing his best. I can't just do nothing. What could I do to help him? But how?
考えてる場合じゃないよな。とにかく俺が何とかしないと。
He leapt forward again, his sword hissing back. And back and forth in shining arcs. I tried hard to twist and put my own arms and legs in the way of Amagiri's. Amagiri faltered for a second. I didn't let that opportunity pass me by, and I hung on Amagiri's arms. Now's your chance, Heisuke! I'll hold him! So stab him along with me! Heisuke's eyes grew wide. Don't worry! I won't get injured! So hurry! Heisuke's eyes burned with intensity. Then... I saw blood spew from Amagi's arms. I broke free, so I ran up to Heisuke.
ったく無茶しやがって。
やってくれましたね。
Amagi's arm seemed to be gravely injured. He was holding his left arm, and you could see his crimson blood trickling freely down the flesh. For a demon, I wasn't sure if his injury would heal in no time. For a demon, I was sure that his injury would heal in no time. But in the moment, Heisuke looked to have the advantage. But just then, the sound of a whistle resounded from a little distance away. I assume people heard me screaming from earlier.
これ以上の騒ぎはごめんです。今は引いておきましょう。
待て!
Heisuke tried to run after him, but Amagiri disappeared into the darkness. I was finally set free and relief washed over me.
大丈夫だったか? さっきの怪我。
I'm fine. A wound like this will heal really fast. Heisuke still stared at me with a puppy dog expression.
女の体に傷をつけちまうなんて男として治れだ。ってサナさんなら言うんだろうな。
Oh. Heisuke?
いや、なんでもね。池田屋の借り、あいつにちゃんと返せなかったな。
You were still really amazing. I mean, you saved me.
いや、そうじゃねえって。もしお前が隙を作ってくれなかったらどうなってたかわからねえし。
Heisuke's gaze seemed empty as he looked down at the ground. Oh no. Heisuke's shoulder jerked. How are things over there? Are you getting along with Ito-san and everyone fine?
まあ。やっぱり伊藤さんはすげえ人でさ。俺が思いつかねえようなことを次々に考えついて。新選組にいた頃とは違って世の中の動きとかよく見えるようになった気がするし。やっぱりあの時の俺の判断は間違ってなかったってそう思ってる。
Even though he said all of this, I could sense a hint of regret, or even like he was forcing it. It was pretty obvious to me that he wasn't entirely speaking from the heart. If he's regretting it, he should just come back to the Shinsengumi. Kondo-san, Hijikata-san, Nagakura and Harada. I'm sure they're all hoping for his return. Heisuke. Just when I was about to say something, I saw a few people running in our direction. They were Shinsengumi men.
あ、やべ。そんじゃ俺もう行くよ。送ってやれなくてごめんな。
Heisuke? Before I even had a chance to say goodbye, he disappeared into the night. I knew he couldn't be seen by the Shinsengumi, but I'd hoped he'd get to talk to him. But I hoped I'd get to talk to him a little longer. After time passed to the following day, we can skip.
Oh.
Yeah, the monks don't like us fighting on their temple grounds, so they kicking us out, but they're also giving us a place to live. How kind of them! They really want us to move. October 1867. It had been half a year since Heisuke's departure. The demons, the furies, my father. So much had happened in that time. But whenever I had time to myself, my thoughts would drift invariably to Heisuke. I wonder how he's doing. Every time we ate together, I couldn't help but notice that he wasn't there. I didn't hear his voice chime in every time Nagakura and Harada were talking to each other. Everywhere I went were holes in my world that Heisuke had once filled. You know, when I got here, he was the first person that was nice to me. I had been taken to the Shinsengumi's headquarters under threat of violence, knowing I might be killed at any time. Many times during those first few days, Heisuke's kind, approachable smile had comforted me. When I let my mind wander, it was easy to think that he was still with us. That he could step through the door, smile, and... What?
Ah, Yukimura-kun.
Ah,
実にいましたか?
it's you two. Oh, Shimada-san, Yamazaki-san.
どうかしたのか？朝飯の時、後で話があると言っておいたはずだが。
Right, of course. What was it you needed to talk about?
実は我々は現在副長の加盟で情報収集の任に当たっていまして、それに関して君の力を借りたいんです。
What? But if he has you working on it, then this means a mission for the watch, right? What could I possibly do for the watch?
いや、むしろ君でなければできない任務だ。副長から許可ももらっている。無理にとは言わないが、ぜひ手伝ってほしい。
Something only I could do? I couldn't imagine what kind of mission that might be, but it wasn't very often that someone asked me for my help. Sure, whatever you need. They led me to Kondo-san's second home. According to Yamazaki, they used it from time to time to change into undercover garments. So I guess we're doing something where people can't know that we're from the Shinsengumi? I took the clothes they handed me. It's been a long time since I wore something like this. Do I look weird?
いえ、随分と様になっています。今日の街を歩く女子と比べても遜色ありませんよ。
They had given me a woman's kimono. It wasn't particularly fetching, but it felt like silk. I had a feeling it was rather expensive.
見事な女装だ。これなら普通の女子と見分けがつかないだろう。
I see. Thank you. I had a feeling they meant well, but it was very oddly phrased. Oh, wait. It was very odd praise. Have they forgotten that I actually was a girl? Maybe? Maybe they have.
どうした池村君？目的地に着いたぞ。
Oh, right. So, this is it? Isn't this just a normal tea house?
ええ。雪村君の任務は普通の女子としてここで待機することです。
Okay. So you just want me to sit here?
ああ。後のことは自然とわかるはずだ。それまでは自由にしていてくれ。
我々は遠くから見守らせてもらいます。甘いものでも頼んでゆっくりしていてください。
What are you two up to? Before I could respond, they turned and walked off. Act normal? I'd never been given such a command in all of the time I'd been in Kyoto. Whoops, Kyo. Whoops. I ordered some tea and dumplings and sat down. So I'm just supposed to figure it out? Figure what out? Were some important people from the Satsuma and Choshu clans coming here to meet in secret? I was still trying to puzzle out what I was supposed to do next when...
ああ、言われなくても分かってんよ。伊藤さんに逆らう気はないって。
ならいいがな。俺たちの中には近藤の子飼いだった貴様を官庁の類ではと疑っている者も多い。忘れるな。
分かってるって言ってんだろ。用がそれだけならさっさと行けよ。
I turned towards the voices and swallowed. There was the face that had appeared in my mind every day for the past 6 months. I stopped myself halfway through. The Shinsengumi and the guard were strictly forbidden from talking to one another. If anyone caught me, Heisuke and I would both be in a great deal of trouble. So I turned back, away from them, but as I did, Heisuke himself sat down next to me.
たくなんなんだよあいつら。おちおち茶も飲んでられねえし。そこの姉ちゃん、どうかしたのか？なんか調子悪そうだぞ。
Oh, shoot. I looked away quickly, hoping he wouldn't recognize me. Oh, no, I'm fine. Nothing wrong.
なんだよそんな怯えて。俺ってそんな怖い顔してるか？
His face was so confused and worried that I couldn't stop a snort of laughter from escaping through my hands.
って今度は人の顔見て笑っただろ。失礼なやつだな。初対面の相手に。えお前。
Is something wrong? His eyes widened and then I saw realization drawn on his face. Man, he's really stumped.
綺麗な人だなって見惚れただけだ。気にしないでくれ。
Thank you. You're a real flatterer.
お世辞じゃないし。って悪い。初対面の相手に何言ってんだろうな俺。
Oh, come on. Everybody likes to get compliments.
そっか。それならいいんだ。変なこと言ってごめんな。
I saw Chizuru on his lips, but he didn't speak it. There was no way to know who was listening, and since we weren't allowed to meet, we couldn't risk revealing that we actually knew who the other was. After a short, awkward silence, Heisuke spoke.
なあ、お前はこの茶屋にはよく来るのか?
Oh, no. This is my first time. How about you?
そっか。俺は最近よく来てる。島原で酒を飲む気分になれないし。それにさ、こういう出会いもあるなら、酒よりお茶も悪くないと思う。
Maybe if I hadn't met him through the Shinsengumi, we could have met like this. Two strangers who meet in a tea house by chance. To anyone else, that was how we would look. You're right. I guess meeting here is some kind of fate, sir.
敬語は使わなくていいって。多分同じぐらいの年だろ
Really? Okay, I guess I can do that.
ああ、それでいいよ。そっちの方が気が楽だ。それよりさ、早く口つけないとうまいお茶が冷めちまうぞ。ここのみたらし団子とすげえ合うんだよ。
Oh, you're right. It's sweet, and then the bitterness of the tea. This is delicious.
だろ？せっかくだからもう一つ俺がおごってやるよ。
It had been a long time since I'd spoken with Heisuke. Unfortunately, we had to watch what we said very carefully, which limited us mostly to talk of the food and the weather. He was close enough to touch, but the wall that had sprung up between the Shinsengumi and the guards still stood between us. It's starting to get chilly now that it's autumn. Are you doing alright? Any colds or anything?
俺は頑丈なのが取り柄だからな。むしろお前は大丈夫なのか？風邪とか、それ以外でも困ってることがあったりとかしないか？
I'm fine. 大丈夫. I mean, it's not like every day is fun all the time, and things are hard every so often, but my voice caught in my throat. I still had the demons and furies to worry about, and there still was no word from my father. But I didn't want to worry Heisuke, so instead I simply smiled. I'm doing alright. I'm pretty tough too.
そっか。お前がそう言うならきっと大丈夫なんだな。じゃあこれからも体には気をつけろよ。最近は京だろうが江戸だろうが物騒だからさ。
There was something in his expression that told me he'd seen through my lie. But even if he had, he chosen not to call my bluff and smiled instead. We kept talking after that. By the time we finished our tea, it was already late afternoon. One of us said they had to go, although I couldn't remember which one.
もう少し話してたかったな。こういう時なんて言って別れりゃいいかわかんねえや。
He seemed reluctant to stand up. To the outside world, we were supposed to be two strangers who just happened to meet. We weren't even supposed to know one another's name. But to say it just once, to put a name to the face that was in my thoughts every day.
そんな顔すんなって。可愛い顔が台無しだぞ。
Before I could say his name, he stopped me, but his words were soft and kind.
じゃあ、縁があったらまた会おうな。
Finally, he stood and began to walk. Just as he passed me, I heard him whisper.
いつだったか、振り袖着て見せてくれって頼んだことがあったけどさ。今ここで少しだけそれが叶ったよ。ありがとな。
See you later. Then we were past one another, walking slowly but inexorably away. As I watched Heisuke's back growing smaller, I felt someone approach me from behind. You two were watching the entire time, too! Oh! Neither of them spoke. They just waited quietly. It was kind of them, and I smiled. Thank you. Both of you.
悪いが礼を言われる理由がわからないな。
for taking me on this mission, for bringing me here to see him.
別に雪村君のためではない。こちらはただ東堂さんの様子から五両エイジの動きを探ろうとしただけだ。その目的はもう十分果たした。日が暮れる前に帰るとしよう。
Without waiting for a response, Yamazaki-san set off at a brisk walk. Still, there was something in his tone that sounded much kinder than it usually did.
ああ言っていますが、山崎君は君のことも東堂君のことも気にかけているんです。
Oh.
もちろん俺も今回の一件に許可を出した副長も同じ心持ちですが。
I know, and that means a lot, really.
さあ、山崎君に遅いと言われる前に追いかけるとしましょう。
It seemed like everyone in the Shinsengumi was worried about me. They did so much, and I couldn't ever repay them. Someday, though, I would. I repeated those words to myself and looked back at Heisuke one last time. The watch! The watched boys are so sweet. Oh. And again, I keep thinking Shimada needs a root. But I don't know how one will make a root out of Shimadas. Because we know where Shimada ends up. And now we do this. Button. Button water.
まあ今まそさはつみんだけな今
Right. This is when we found out Sakamoto is dead.
なパツわた
Da 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 da.
つってもさ俺そう
Saito's back.
ま
And we find out that they really want to kill Kondo-san. So we gotta counter by killing Ito.
きみゅみゅじわきほいらざんまそのじ土方さこご平助なんだあむそんとしておら長くへなあこれもし
Kondo turned around and looked very surprised. I haven't been given any orders. I would like to help.
手伝うと言っても今回の仕事は池田屋や金門の変の時とは違うんだよ。君はこんな役目には関わるべきではない。
It was true. This wasn't a patrol or even a guarding mission. This was the assassination of a former comrade and an attack on men who'd split from the Shinsengumi. I still wanted to help. Still, I wanted to do what I could. It might be my last chance to see Heisuke. Please, let me go. I won't get it in the way.
あのな、今回のは使いでも遊びでもねえんだ。一時は同志だった奴らの暗殺だ。万が一のことがあれば、平助だって切ることになるかもしれねえんだぜ。
I know. It's not something to be taken lightly. I knew that the Shinsengumi had carried out these sorts of black operations before. There was no way I could have stayed with them and as long as I had and not known, but I couldn't just let them shoulder all the responsibility. I was done looking away until the deed was done. No more. Perhaps it's presumptuous of me to say so, but I consider myself a member of the Shinsengumi. And because we're going through this, I want to help everybody.
決意は固いようだな。
His face had lost its usual warmth. It wasn't anger or cruelty that it showed now, but the gravity of a general addressing his men.
ならばどうする？この一件において君は何をしたいんだね？
I had already decided. I would convince Heisuke. Kyoto was a city of many streets. Some of them more quiet and isolated than others. Aburanokoji was one of these, and it was where Nakakura, Harada, and I hid with the rest of the men assigned to this task.
そろそろ来る頃だな。
We set out Ito's corpse as bait to draw the guard into a trap. My teeth bit into my lips so hard I had to stop before I drew blood. If Ito had been allowed to live, it would have been a danger to the Shinsengumi. I understood that. But this, it just seems... Is this something that could be forgiven?
辛いんなら見る必要はねえぜ。目をつぶってろ。
No. Whatever I might think of what we were about to do, this was my only chance to save Heisuke. I couldn't look away. We sat there for... I wasn't sure how long. Until we finally heard the sound of the guard approaching.
あそこに倒れてるのは誰だ？まさか伊藤さん？一体誰がこのような真似を？
6 or 7 of them rushed forward to examine Ito's corpse. Among them, of course. He hadn't noticed us yet, but the taciturn, downcast boy I saw in the street was nothing like the Heisuke I'd known. Harada and Nagakura picked him out at the same moment I did. Silently, they both closed their eyes for a moment in silent prayers.
行くぞ。ああ。
新八山佐野さん。それにお前もか。
なるほど。兄貴の死体を餌に待ち伏せか。ゲスの集まりにふさわしい卑怯な真似をしてくれやがるぜ。長倉、原田、兄貴を殺したのはお前らなんだろ。
Heisuke was drowned out by the cry of Miki, who in turn was interrupted by the sudden report of a gunshot.
なんだ、近くに誰かいるのか。
If he was hesitating, then it hadn't been the Guardians who fired. Was it the Shinsengumi?
おいおい、一体どこのバカが撃ちやがった。どこのバカとは釣れねえな。せっかくこの俺様が相手をしに来てやろうと思ったのによ。
Anyway, hello, human. I'm here to play with you. Oh, God. Shiranui? I'm a giddy?
おい、どうしてお前らがここにいるんだよ。なんでってな、仕事だよ、仕事。頭の悪いお前らと、もっと頭の悪い御両エジの連中が罠にはまるのを見物しに来たってことさ。
He waved one of his arms casually in some sort of signal. Where did all these people come from?
よくもまあこれだけの人数を集めたもんだ。風体からすると薩摩の連中だな。 摩だと。
I heard Mickey dubiously mumble from a distant location.
不意打ちのような真似をしたことは詫びましょう。だが我々も一応は判明に従う責務がありましてね。
薩摩の判明かよ。お前はともかく知らぬいは長州に関係してるんじゃなかったか。ご主人様を見限って薩摩についたってんなら笑うとこだけどな。
それがな、今や薩摩と長州は仲良し小良しらしくてな。んなことよりてめえらの心配をしたらどうだ。
As Shiranui spoke, the men behind him began to inch forward. I reached for my sword, but Harada stopped me.
壁を背にして俺の後ろにいろ。一歩でも近づくやつは俺が片っ端から倒してやる。
From the rest of the Shinsengumi, I heard the sounds of hands tightening on hilts and swords being loosened at the scabbards. I swallowed.
どういうことか説明しろ。お前らが薩摩藩の手の者だって言うんなら、どうして俺たちまで取り囲んでやがるんだ。
ああ、お前らが伊藤派とかいう連中か。坂本の件じゃ世話になったらしいな。
Did he mean the assassination of Ryoma Sakamoto? Then, were the Satsuma and the guards allies?
んじゃま、ご苦労さん。礼は言ったから、とっとと死んでくれや。
ミキ君、危ない。おい、しっかりしろ。
Mickey went to the body of one of his men, but the man seemed to be dead already. He glared at Shiranui, seething with contempt.
ずいぶんな真似をしてくれるじゃねえか。裏切るつもりか、薩摩藩。
ああ、そういうお前らは昔の仲間を裏切ったんだろうが。坂本暗殺は新選組の原田の仕業ですって噂を広めてな。
やっぱりそうか。つまらねえ噂を流してくれやがったのはてめえらだったんだな。
ま、お前らはもう用済みってこった。口封じのためにはお前ら全員殺しちまうのが一番簡単だろ。
なんだと。
Both Shinsengumi and guard were only moments from attacking when Amagiri's voice echoed across the street.
この戦力差で戦うのはおすすめしませんね。時に新選組の方々、一つ提案があるのですが。
なんだ。
そこにいる娘をこちらに預けるつもりはありませんか。そうしていただければ皆さん方のことは見逃しましょう。おい天桐、勝手なことを抜かすな。そいつとて新選組。
Amagiri stopped the Satsuma vessel just by glaring back at him with a furious gaze.
勘違いしてもらっては困ります。判明には可能な限り従うつもりですが、私にとってはそれが第一ではありません。しかし
Gunshot resounded again. The Satsuma vessel fell to the ground and he was no longer moving. Shiranui blew the smoke from his gun as it slowly rose from the barrel.
まだ何か言いたいことがあるやつはいるか。この弾をぶち込まれてまだ生きてられたら聞いてやるよ。
How could he? To Shiranui, there was no enemies or allies. He was a beast that the Satsuma had only just learned they could not control.
静かになったところで 答えを聞きましょう。我々の提案を受け入れるか否か。
Gee, I wonder what the answer is gonna be, Amagiri. Not even a breath disturbed the silence of Aburano Koji. The demons, the Satsuma, the guards, and the Shinsengumi all waited to see how I would respond.
だとよ、佐野。どうする？
聞くまでもねえだろ。奴らのザレ言なんて信用できるか。平助の冗談の方がまだ可愛げがあるぜ。
いいね、いいね、その強がり。じゃあこの数を突破できるのかよ、お前ら。
At a motion from Shiranui, the Satsuma rushed forward, a solid wave of men and swords that tumbled over the Shinsengumi and guard alike. Oh god, what are we doing? I was worried about Heisuke. I could see Heisuke hesitate. Who was his enemy, he must be wondering.
Todo! 加勢しろ! お前ここへ何をしに来たんだ!
Heisuke re-gripped his swords, but... Heisuke! I called his name in desperation and ran up to him. I'd come here for one reason, and though our attack had hardly gone as planned, that hadn't changed.
何やってんだよ、バカ! 切られたらどうすんだ!
He shoved me around behind him, his voice a mixture of surprise and anger. I'm sorry, but I had to tell you something. My run through the fighting had set my heart to pound like an angry drum, and my lungs burned. I took a deep breath. You have to come back to the Shinsengumi. Kondo-san, Hijikata-san, Inoue, Shimada, Yamazaki, they're all waiting for your return. I miss you, Heisuke. I want you to come back. Please.
今さら戻れるわけねえだろ!
Swords clashed and men screamed around us, but I ignored them.
伊藤さんについていくのが国のためになるって。これであんな薬に関わらずに済む。仲間を犠牲にしなくてもよくなるって。そう思ってたのに。なのに今さらどうすりゃいいんだよ!
I faltered in response to the intense sword battle, but I questioned him. Do you still believe that?
わかんねえよ。わかるわけねえじゃねえか。佐野さんを坂本殺しの犯人に仕立てるっていきなり言われて、そんなのどう考えてもおかしいんじゃねえかって思ったけど、でも
Heisuke looked pained. He had a self-derisive smile mixed that looked remorseful. It hurt me to see him so conflicted.
やっぱりダメだったのか。
I wanna hug Heisuke so bad right now!
どんなに辛くても苦しくても、自分が進む道は最後まで自分で決めるべきだったのかよ。
Heisuke.
この頃はさ、いつも新選組にいた時のことばっか考えてたよ。あの薬のこととか、羅刹のこととか、そういうのは全部思い出の中から消えちまってさ、不思議と良かったことばっかり思い出しちまうんだよな。
I think about you a lot too. I'm sure I'm not the only one either.
そっか。
The clattering of swords filled the air like rain.
戻りてえな。もし新選組に戻ったって、今の俺は何のために戦えばいいのかすらわからねえけどさ。
What do you mean?
何をしているトド。こいつは新選組だろうが切れ。
Another member of the guard leapt at us from the side, his sword driving towards me. Just then,
ダメだ。
Heisuke spun and drove the hilt of his sword into the man's stomach. The guard member lost consciousness and fell to the floor. Heisuke was in a state of shock, then let his eyes fall to the man doubled over on the ground. He almost seemed to move subconsciously. It was as if he thought he was inhabiting another person's body, staring at his hands incredulously.
そうだ。お前、この土壇場で俺たちを裏切るつもりか。兄貴をあんな汚いやり方でなぶり殺しにした新選組の奴らに作って言うのかよ。ああ。
His shoulders jolted in response. As he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper.
ごめんな、ミキ。俺、御領英治失格だ。伊藤さんはすっげえ頭がいいし、時流を見る目も人脈もあるし。あの人が言うことならきっと正しいんだろうと思って今までついてきたけど。
Heisuke slashed at his Satsuma warrior one after another as he protected me.
だけど今は思想なんてどうでもいい。砂漠派もその派も関係ねえ。相手が誰だろうが鬼だろうが関係ねえ。
He turned to look at me over his shoulder, and the grin on his face lit up like the sun. Here was the Heisuke I knew. It was the face of the Heisuke I knew so well.
俺が守ってやるよ。
Oh!
お前を狙うすべての敵から俺がお前を守ってやる。
He really just said that. And with that final triumphant yell, he brought his sword up to face his next foe. With that, the battle began. Countless Satsuma poured into the narrow street in an attempt to choke us with sheer numbers. Nagakura's sword flickered and leapt, utterly unconcerned with any odds.
ぞろぞろと数だけは揃いやがって。死にてえやつからかかってきやがれ。
Blood spurts and screams came from everywhere.
くそ、お前らごときに殺されてたまるか。
The battle was so intense that I couldn't keep up with who was battling whom.
おとなしくそこのガキを差し出して命乞いでもすりゃよかったのによ。楽に死ねると思うんじゃねえぞ。
やめとけよ、知らぬい。この状況じゃむやみに撃っても味方の被害が増えるだけだぜ。
狙いをつけられねえじゃねえか。役に立たねえ上に邪魔なんだよ、てめえら。
He kicked out furiously at a nearby Satsuma soldier who had the misfortune to stumble into Shiranui's line of fire. This is just... I knew Nagakura, Harada, and Heisuke were skilled swordsmen, but I'd never seen them fight the way they did that night. Several of the Shinsengumi soldiers made a wall around me, and I watched as the captains tossed foes aside like they were made of straw. Then from across the battlefield, I heard Amagiri's basso rumble. Bass rumble. Basso! Bass!
単身私に挑んでくると勇気だけは褒めておきましょう。
あいにくこっちは人手不足でな。 嫌でも俺に付き合ってもらうぜ。
1対1でも私に勝てなかったあなたがさらに不利なこの状況で何をなそうというのです。はっ
Even swords weren't enough to stop Amikiri's fists, and Heisuke, with his small frame, was driven back. The Satsuma pressed in, looking for an advantage. No! He's surrounded! Heisuke's plight distracted me from my own, which was a mistake I regretted almost immediately. Before I realized what was happening, 2 Satsuma soldiers burst through the Shinsengumi line, charging straight toward me. No one was close enough to intercept them, and I was nowhere near strong enough to fight off 2 men on my own. They were closer now. No time to dodge. I heard the wet slice of 2 blades cutting into human flesh. It doesn't hurt. When I looked up, the soldiers were dead. A sword pierced the chest of one, straight through the heart, and the other had taken a wakizashi through the throat. I spun towards Heisuke across the street.
なんとか間に合ったみてえだな。
He was smiling. His arms still extended from throwing his swords, and he grinned like he was happy to see me safe. He threw his swords! Huh? That is some aim! Holy crap! Heisuke, why did you do that? He'd never even stopped to consider in my life. He'd never even stopped to consider if my life was worth his own. Amagiri's fist moved horribly, painfully slow. Without his swords, Heisuke had no way to block, and his throw had left him no room to dodge. My ragged scream echoed across the battlefield.
Heisuke! Oi! Heisuke!
くそ！てめえ！どけやがれ！
くそ！なんだこいつらの強さは！退却だ！引け！引け！
なんだ撤退かよ。今回は雑魚どものせいで銃も使えねえしな。しょうがねえか。
Harada's blade became a snarling monstrous whirlwind of death, and before it, the Satsuma and the demon's allies were pushed back until they finally withdrew.
この場は引くぞ！今夜のことは決して忘れん！お前たち新選組の奴ら、全員地獄に叩き落としてやるからな！
Mickey and the remaining Guardian soldiers all scrambled to their feet and ran. But all of that seemed so far away from me. The street of Abanonokoji was painted with red. Everything before my eyes seemed to melt into together, coalescing into deep pools of blood. My hands were smeared with red. The words Heisuke coughed out were red.
どじっちまった。
バカ、喋んな。やべえぞ、この傷はもしかしたら内臓が。
Harada, his injury. Let me see it. I ran over to Heisuke to check up on him. I was praying to myself that it'd be fine. Even if it looked bad, it couldn't be serious, right? It's not as if a strike like that was going to be fatal to someone like Heisuke. I repeated those things over and over in my mind. I mean...
くそ、おい、平介、こんなとこで死ぬんじゃねえよ。
Was he really going to die? No, you can't die here, Heisuke! I just couldn't get myself to believe this. But when I saw it unfold in front of me, I realized I couldn't deny what was happening. I was shivering, but I reached out to wipe the blood desperately from his cheek. His eyes were rolling back into his head, but he looked up at me, shaken and cold.
お前のこと、もっと守ってやりたかったのにな。かっこ悪い。
No, Heisuke, I wasn't ever so important that you should have given your life to protect me. So please save your strength.
大丈夫。心配すんなよ。
とりあえず豚舎に運ぶぞ。ここじゃどうしようもねえ。走れるな。
Of course. We ran through the night, Nagakura and Harada bearing Heisuke's bloody and beaten body back to the Shinsengumi. Every minute felt like an hour, and with every second my heart felt that much closer to tearing in half. The assassination of Ito and the destruction of the Guardians of the Imperial Tomb was later known as the Abura no Koji incident. Both the Shinsengumi and the guard were surprised by the sudden appearance of Satsuma troops and by the demons who accompanied them. Both parties had fallen for the Satsuma trap, and the battlefield was thrown into confusion. During the fight, Heisuke was mortally wounded, and had no choice but to drink the water of life and become a fury or die. As the Battle of Abura no Koji was taking place, the headquarters of the Shinsengumi came under attack from Chikage Kazuma. The monstrous thing my father had made was slowly devouring the Shinsengumi. How long before the water of life swallowed them whole? It is too warm. December 1867. Scarcely a month had passed since Abura no Koji. Saito and Heisuke had returned, but the Shinsengumi was hardly back to normal. A dark, tense atmosphere pervaded the compound. Many men had lost their lives in Kazuma's attacks. Even more had been injured during the attack of Abura no Koji. Among them was Heisuke. Several of the rank-and-file soldiers had seen him mortally wounded. He had looked as if he would not survive. For that reason, Heisuke was declared officially dead and made a member of the Fury Corps. Saito-san had been wounded, but many among the common soldiers began to call him a coward. To them, he had left the Shinsengumi to join Ito-san, then betrayed his new master when he sensed a change in fortunes. I saw no reason why he shouldn't set them straight and say that he had never truly left the Shinsengumi, but he claimed he would rather stay silent than tarnish the honor of the commander and the chief who had ordered his actions. As such, it was decided that Saito-san would leave the compound until tempers had been allowed to cool. He was sent to stay at Tenma in order to protect Kyoto Miura, an official of the Kishu domain. I headed towards the quarters for the Fury Corps. Most of the Furies had been killed during Kazuma's attack, which left their quarters largely empty. The Fury Corps was frightening enough, but the thought of them disappearing was even more so. After all, I knew some of the corps members well.
雪村君、ここに何かご用ですか?
Oh, Sanan-san.
見ての通り、羅刹隊は壊滅状態。わざわざ来ても何もありませんよ。
His words were understandably tight and cold. I was hoping to talk to Heisuke. Is he around?
なるほど。君も物好きですね。
What is that supposed to mean, Sanan? What is my interesting taste? Are you mad that I'm not here to talk to you? I'm sorry for disturbing you at a time like this.
まあ、今ここで話ができるのは私と東堂君くらいですからね。私と話がしたくて来たというよりはよほどまともでしょうね。
So you are jealous.
いいでしょう。呼んできてあげますから、ここで待っていなさい。
Hi. Thank you. He left me there for only a few moments before he returned with Heisuke, but those moments felt like an eternity. I felt as if the blood of the Furies who died that night hung in the air around me like a thick, wet cloud. So much blood was shed, even Heisuke's.
Yo.
I'm sorry for bothering you.
別にいいけどさ。ここに何しに来たんだ?
I only come to see him, but now that I had, I didn't know what to say. He seemed to be feeling much the same. We stood there awkwardly for a while, like two strangers thrown into conversation for the first time. No. I just wanted to see how you were feeling.
まあ、そうだな。あの時の怪我は全部治ってるみてえだ。
Oh, that's... I caught myself before I said good. Heisuke's injury Abura no Koji was not something he should have survived. I didn't need any medical knowledge to know that it was a mortal wound. The only reason he was speaking to me now was because the water of life had done its work. He was healed, yes, but he had become a fury. Good hardly seemed like the right thing to say. What should I say to him? I want to be with you. Can I stay here with you for a while? No, not just here. And not just for a while. I want to stay with you as long as I can. I'll leave if I ever get in your way. Can I?
No.
He blinked. My sudden boldness had clearly caught him off guard. What should I do? I wonder if he thinks it's weird of me to throw this at him like I did. I have to say something. What's so funny?
いや、悪い。そうじゃねえんだ。
Well, what is it?
お前の気持ちが嬉しくてさ。俺もう自分が生きてるのか死んでるのかもよくわからねえから。でも生きてるのか死んでるのかはわからなくても、自分が変わっちまったってことだけはよくわかるんだ。
Heisuke.
怪我はすっかり治ったし、これまでと変わらずに動いていられるんだけど、なんかお先真っ暗な気もするし。 一人でいるとすげえ不安で、いろんなことが頭の中をぐるぐるしてたんだけど。
After Heisuke said that, he looked at me in a bashful way.
お前と話したら少し元気出た。
Really?
ああ、お前ってすげえな。ありがとよ。
That's not really anything you should be thanking me for. Besides, you used to always cheer me up too.
そうか。今俺がもらった分の方が多いんじゃねえかな。
He laughed again. His face wasn't the face of a dead man. It was his. The Heisuke I remembered. Although I couldn't affirm the existence of furies in the water of life, I was really happy to see him smile. Then, can I stay with you?
ああ、もちろん。
Good. Oh, and not just for a little while. As long as I don't get in the way, right?
な、そもそも俺がお前を迷惑だなんて思うわけねえだろ。お前がそうしてって思う限り、そばにいてくれよ。
Really?
ああ、きっとそれで元気になるのは俺の方だし。
Thanks. What a relief. Even if he's a fury, Heisuke is still the same Heisuke I knew. If I could help him, even just a little bit, then I'd be happy. Okay. The night of the Battle of Abunakoji was a turning point for the Shinsengumi. For the men who didn't know the details, it was simply a battle against their former comrades, the Guardians of the Imperial Tomb. Those better informed knew the situation with the Satsuma and Choshu domains had changed, and Ryoma Sakamoto's hit was part of a big plan. Only the heads of the Shinsengumi knew the whole story, the activities of the demons, and Heisuke's transformation into a fury. They were also the only ones who knew that Okita's illness had gotten worse. Such an important battle had stirred up the atmosphere in the compound, and for several days, there were excited men everywhere, shouting and talking. Moments of silence were quite rare. I felt I would only get in the way if I was wandering around the grounds, so I did my best to stay in my room by myself. Are we getting the scene that I think we're gonna get right now? Yes! I don't want this scene. We're skipping. Oh, we're skipping. Because I don't like the scene. And I hate that it's exactly the same in Sun on Sun's Route, which is just... There should have been some difference in this scene if we're going on to the Sun on Sun's Route. I'll excuse it the first time, but the second time, anyway. I'll stay here, right? Yep, I'll stay here. Oh, we also get this scene, which we don't need a repeat of yet, just yet, not just yet. We'll do it for Harada's route, but not right now. Button mash! As Nagakura turned on off our candles just by saying bye. We're getting there. This should be the end of the chapter. Oh, we got one more thing. Yep, we got this daylight part. Okay, now it should be the end of the chapter. Oh, I just saw something very interesting. Oh. Oh. Oh, okay. December 1867. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna take a quick break. I have returned. Anyway, December 1867. The imperial restoration shook Kyoto to its core. The shogun and his government suddenly found the ground giving way beneath their feet. The domains that had long opposed the shogun began to gather in Kyoto, with the Satsuma at their head. Yoshinobu Tokugawa fled to Osaka and was soon followed by more and more of his ministers and associates. The shogunate had begun to withdraw from Kyoto, and the Shinsengumi followed. Our standing orders were to provide protection for Yoshinobu, who had taken up residence in Osaka Castle. For that reason, among others, our headquarters was moved to the Fushimi Magistrate's office, situated along a route between Kyoto and Osaka. Nighttime. The mill looked somehow different from the magistrate's office than it had from elsewhere in the city. What's going to happen to us? There was no one there to answer me. The rebel soldiers were growing more restless by the minute, it seemed. It seemed that war was inevitable now, and the only question was when. If one listened very carefully, it almost seemed as if one could hear the footsteps of war coming closer. Closer. There was no mistaking it. Those were footsteps. I turned around in panic, glancing nervously in the direction I'd heard the steps coming from.
Yo, ohayo. って何鳩が豆鉄砲食らったみたいな顔してんだよ。
Because you just scared the fuck out of us, Heisuke. I struggled desperately to regain my composure. Oh, no, it's nothing. Ohio? Did you just get up?
ああ、ついさっき。まあ確かにおはようって時間でもないか。不思議だよな。日の出前に眠くなって、日が暮れると目が覚めるなんてさ。
His smile turned bitter for just the barest fraction of a second. Heisuke had been a fury for 2 months, which meant he'd been sleeping during the day. I hadn't been able to see him as much, and I was beginning to get a little lonely. How are you feeling? Any changes?
大丈夫すぎて拍子抜けしてるぐらいだって。俺の体だけじゃなく周りも変わんねえよ。土方さんは相変わらず厳しいし。新八さんや佐野さんなんてバカは死んでも治んねえって本当だなとか俺を見て笑うしな。
I was pretty sure that was just their way of trying to tell him that he was still the same Heisuke he'd been before. When it looked like you might die, Harada and Nagakura looked really worried. I had been too, of course, but that was neither here nor there. Besides, there are a lot of people who think you are dead, and they're really sad about it.
8番組の連中とかか。
Oh, yeah, his unit, his division!
あいつらには教えてやりてえよな。実は生きてるってさ。
That has to hurt. Officially, Heisuke was dead and his funeral had been well attended. He was clearly missed. I found myself wondering, if I were to die, would my father mourn me?
どうしたんだよ。暗い顔しちまって。
No. Oh. I'm sure your family is worried too.
俺の家族?
He frowned suddenly and looked at me for a moment before turning away. Now we get to Heisuke's backstory. I think. Had I said something I shouldn't have? I wonder if I had offended him in any way.
No.
What's the matter?
お前、最初に今日に来た時、家族を、行動さんを探してるって言ってただろ。
What about it?
あの時さ、実は俺、ちょっとだけお前のことが羨ましかったんだ。
Just a little jealous.
俺、親を探せねえ立場だから。
Not allowed? Do you mean that you can't find them?
なあ、お前になら話してもいいかな。伊勢に津藩って藩があるの知ってるか？
I think I've heard of it.
まあ江戸からは随分離れてるしな。その津藩はさ、東道藩とも呼ばれてるんだ。
Wait, so it's a domain with the same last name as you?
そう。俺は父親の顔も知らねえんだけど、その藩とは関わりがあるみてえでさ。多分俺、東道藩のお偉いさんの隠し子とかだったんじゃねえかな。
Heisger called him the big guy. I mean, if it's the name that's being used for the whole domain, maybe he's the feudal lord then?
でさ、その父親らしい人が毎月暮らしに困らねえだけの金を送ってくれてたんだよ。絶対に自分を探さないことって条件付きでさ。
And in reality, it's always the real Heisuke Todo. This was just a rumor that he was an illegitimate child of Todo, but it might be true. There's a debate about it, to be fair. But I like how they handle it here. Don't go looking for him. I thought to myself how I would have felt if I were in his shoes. To have a father who sent me money without even knowing what kind of person he is. Or not to be allowed to speak with him, let alone take time out of my life to see him. I couldn't imagine how I'd deal with it, yet Heisuke showed no signs of remorse or anger. He laughed, but it was flat and without humor. He wore a dejected expression before he spoke.
俺多分間違いで生まれた子ってことだよな。だからさ、俺が死んでも悲しむ親なんていねえんだ。
Oh.
向こうにとっちゃむしろ死んでてくれた方が都合いいんじゃねえかな。
Heisuke. I felt I had to say something. You know that's not true. You know that's not true. I didn't know what kind of people Heisuke's parents might have been. They could have been good or bad or indifferent. But right then, I felt they couldn't be completely unconcerned with whether or not he was dead. After all, they were his parents. Maybe the circumstances meant they couldn't be with you as they'd like. But I'm sure your parents loved you very much.
お前な、今の話を聞いただけでどうしてそう言い切れるんだよ。慰めなら別にいらねえって、もう慣れてるし。
You may not be able to see your father, but what about your mother?
母上とは江戸の家を飛び出したきり会ってねえよ。
You ran away?
俺の父親がどんな人だったのかさえ教えてくれなかったし、俺もその頃はガキだったから母上に当たり散らしたりしちまってたしさ。
Back in Edo, I used to help my father out by helping to deliver babies at the local clinic. So I'm a little familiar with how it all works, but those women risk their lives to give birth. There are many mothers who sometimes even die after successfully giving birth. So when your mother gave birth to you, Heisuke, she walked in preparing for everything, even death. And besides, for your father, you're still getting money every month, aren't you? That means whoever's sending it at least wants you to have enough money to be happy, right? If they didn't care whether or not you lived or died, then why did you get sent money in the first place? Then why send you money in the first place? The theory I'd formed was that his parents wanted him but couldn't. They knew money was a poor substitute for a family. It seemed reasonable. He was quiet for a few minutes, but at last his face burst out in a grin and he laughed. No, I mean, I don't think. What's so funny? Goodness.
でもそっか。それなら俺が死んだって知らせを聞いて向こうでも悲しんでくれる奴がいたのかな。
Then maybe someday you can tell them the truth. That you're alive. I'm sure they'd like that. Is this our plot? Is this one of our plots for part 2? Please let it be. I really like this to be a plot. Maybe my words got through to him. Heisuke's mood had seemed a little brighter, even if it were just a tad, than he'd looked earlier. The new year came and went. It was January 3rd. Before we'd even had time to let the excitement of a new year soak in, war was upon us. One of the major routes from Osaka to Kyoto ran by the Fushimi Magistrate's office. A number of soldiers were traveling to Kyoto by that particular route one day when they found themselves confronted by Satsuma's soldiers. Fighting broke out, and before long the battle had spread to the magistrate's office. The Satsuma had already set up their men on the high ground and spent most of the day raining cannon fire on the Shinsengumi, and anyone else unfortunate enough to be in range. As the light began to fade, the guns on the hill gradually fell silent, and it seemed that the day's battle was over. The men guarding the magistrate's office let out a great sigh of relief.
Sano! 生きてるか?
なんとかな。夕方頃は本気で死ぬと思ったぜ。なんせ奉行所を出た途端、砲弾銃弾雨あられときた。
たく薩摩のやつら高台に陣取っていい気になりやがって。飛び道具ってのは卑怯者が使う武器じゃねえのか?
He spoke for everyone there. The bombardment had gone on all day with no respite, and the vaunted skill of the Shinsengumi meant little if they couldn't get close enough to their enemies to strike with a sword. Nagakura and the rest had done their best to protect the magistrate's office, but they'd been forced into an entirely defensive battle, and had little to show for it. What's going to happen now?
ここまでは防戦一方だったが、日が暮れた今ならば敵の銃の狙いも定まらぬはずだ。反撃のためにはこの機を逃すわけにはいかん。
斎藤の言う通りだ。
Hijikata-san, what were our losses today?
正直言って厳しいな。だが今夜を逃したら明日にはもっと状況が悪くなっちまうだ。闇に乗じて敵陣営に乗り込むしかねえ。
待ってました。このまま防戦一方よりそっちの方が俺らの性に合ってるよな。
俺も賛成です。銃撃戦が続けばこちらが不利になるのは目に見えています。
問題は動けるやつが減っちまってるってことだよな。うちの10番組のやつらも 全員は動けね
え。近藤さんや宗司がいてくれりゃもう少し楽なんだがな。
Kondo-san had been shot before the new year, and had gone to Osaka to recover under Matsumoto-sensei's care along with Okita. He was doing much better, but he was still in no condition to fight.
ほぼ無傷の羅刹体を使うしかねえ。近藤さんがもしここにいればそう指示しただろうよ。
羅刹体？
何をほうけているのです、東堂君。我々にご指名ですよ。ようやく我々の活躍の機会が巡ってきたということです。
ああ、そっか。俺らの出番か。
There was something strange in his voice. Is something wrong?
いや、そういや俺羅刹体だったってことを思い出してさ。
I was looking at something. Hold on.
じゃあ日中寝てた分を取り返さねえとな。
よっしゃ、その意気だ平助。俺たちも早速野襲に備えるぞ。
The roar of a cannon interrupted Nagakura, and the room immediately fell silent.
敵に先手を打たれたか。
We leapt to our feet at the sound of a second report, following almost immediately by the crack of splintering wood. I clapped my hands over my ears instinctively, and when I pulled them away, Hichikata-san was already issuing orders.
囲まれてるようだな。行くぞお前ら。これから敵を押し返す。
Just as Hijikata-san had guessed, Satsuma troops had surrounded the magistrate's office. The cannon blew the gate open, and the soldiers were already streaming through the breach.
わざわざあっちから来るなんざ手間が省けてちょうどいいってもんだ。やったろうじゃねえか。新選組2番組組長長倉新八、ここにありだ。
He grinned and set off for the gate with a handful of other men. Sana-san drew his own sword and looked over at Heisuke.
さて、我々も行きますよ、東堂君。いえ、薩長軍の兵全員に我々羅刹の恐怖を刻み込んであげましょう。
His smile sent a cold shiver down my spine. I felt bad for being suspicious of him, but Sana-san had changed. The man I'd met long ago was someone I would have trusted with Heisuke, but Sana-san the Fury was... scary.
待ってくれ、サナンさん。
何です？
人手が足りねえんだ。平助はここの守りに残してやってほしいんだな。
サナさん。
お前も他の大使に守られるよりは事情を知ってる平助に守ってもらう方がいいだろう。
Of course. Maybe Harada was looking out for me?
ってことだから頼むぜ、サンナンさん。
わかりました。
そんじゃ俺は新八を援護してくるからここのことは頼んだぜ。
東堂君がどこにいようと構いませんよ。どのみちこの状況では全ての場所が前線ですからね。
He drove his sword through a nearby Satsuma soldier in one lightning fast strike, then laughed. Holy shit, Sanan! The Fury Corps followed behind him, crying loudly as they charged into battle.
羅刹隊は全員私についてきなさい。たとえ銃を持っていようと人間ごときが我々に勝てるはずがありません。
He looked like death. I shivered. Heisuke must have noticed coming over beside me.
何があっても絶対に俺から離れるんじゃねえぞ
And that was all he had time to say before the battle was upon us. Blood and bullets fell like rain, and all around us were the cries of the wounded and dying.
くそ切っても切ってもキリがねえ大丈夫かどこにも怪我なんてしてねえよな
I'm fine. Are you okay? The battle had been going on for some time, and he'd been hit by both guns and swords in several places.
心配すんなって
Blood still leaked from his wounds, but the flow was quickly lessening, and his wounds were closing themselves.
俺はもう人間じゃねえんだこの程度じゃ死ねねえんだよ
What? Then something happened.
どうしたなんか気になることでもあるか
No. Heisuke didn't even realize. I was pretty sure, but what happened was... The bullet skidded against the side of Heisuke's shoulder, ripping his kimono and splattering blood. Heisuke! I reached out to staunch the flow of blood, but before I could, the wound closed.
いや大丈夫だこれぐらいならすぐ治るから
Heisuke's glance lingered momentarily on his now healed wound, and for a moment I saw sadness in his eyes.
ほんと化け物以外の何者でもねえよな刀も銃も効かねえなんて
Then I heard another gunshot.
いい加減思い知れよ銃なんて効かねえっつってんだろ消えろお前ら全員さっさとここから消えちまえよ
It happened again, and this time I saw it. For a moment, his hair was white. But that wasn't all.
人間の体って不便だよな傷を負うとすぐに動きが鈍っちまう
Why, then, was a grin beginning to stretch its way across his face?
残ってるのはあと一人か意外とあっけなかったな
Heisuke licked the blood that splattered onto his face. His grin reminded me of the grotesque smile I'd seen on the face of a fury mad for blood. I felt terror rise like fire in my breast, and before I knew it, I was crying out to him. Heisuke! That's enough! Let's go back now!
何言ってんだよまだいるだろ次の敵次の血が
I could see there could be no doubt about it now. His hair was white as snow, and his eyes shone with a hideous thirst for blood. Heisuke pulled his sword from the stomach of the last Satsuma soldier with a wet, sickening sound. He lifted his hand covered in gore to his face and stretched out his tongue. No! Heisuke, you can't! I threw my arms around him and tried just desperately to pull his arm down and away.
何するんだよ
It was a stupid thing to do, and I knew it. I knew quite well just how dangerous and uncontrollable Furious could be. But I couldn't bring myself to believe that Heisuke could be like that. I cursed myself for not trying to stop him sooner. It's all right now. There are no more enemies left. There's no one left for you to fight, so please stop, Heisuke! At first, he looked at me with anger written plain across his face, furious that I had tried to restrain him, but then his eyes caught on the blood covering his hands and sword.
俺は今何をしようとしてたんだ。血を見てたら急に我を忘れて、それで。
He took one wavering step, then another. He backed away from me. When he turned back to look at me, his face was twisted with grief, fear, and most of all, despair.
俺もうダメかもしれねえ。気づかねえうちにどんどん人間じゃなくなってく自分が怖い。今も血が欲しくて気が狂いそうだ。
He looked small, frightened, and sad. It's going to be okay, Hesuke. You're going to be fine. You're still human.
だけど今の俺は黄昏が夜明けに見える。月が太陽に見える。人の血の匂いが、感触が、ぬくもりが心地いいんだよ。
それでいいんですよ、東堂君。心に命じられるままに従いなさい。
Sanan, we don't need you here right now. We're having a crisis. You're not helping.
三男さん。
耐える必要などどこにあるのですか。人の血が欲しいのであれば口にすればいい。そうすればその渇きは潤います。
Sanan-san! With dark eyes, Sanan-san invited Heisuke. He looked nothing like a human. Stop it, Sanan-san! You're going to confuse him!
どこが変だというのです。血を飲まねば生きられぬ体になってしまったのならば、そうするしかないでしょう。我々に血を求めるなというのは、人間に食事をするなと言っているようなものです。雪村君、あなたは東堂君に飢えて死ねというのですか。
Well, I guess if there was no other way to rid yourself of the pain, then you'd have no other choice, but...
私たちはすでに人間ではありません。羅刹です。彼が今感じている苦しみ、痛みは同じ羅刹である私にしかわかりませんよ。
Oh, God damn it, Sanan! He was right. As a fury, he would know what Heisuke was going through far better than I could. But the Heisuke that I knew wasn't the type of person to accept readily the idea of drinking the blood of humans. Just then...
三男さん、わざわざ助言してくれてありがてえけどさ、こいつは俺のことをよく分かってくれてるよ。多分三男さんよりずっとさ。
Heisuke... The pain he was feeling had brought him to his knees, looked up at Sana-san and me with a grin. Heisuke, are you alright? Does it hurt?
吸血衝動がやってきたのでしょう。血の匂いをあれほど嗅いだ後ですからね。
No. Heisuke looked pained, but he tried desperately to smile and looked up.
安心しろよ。俺は人の血なんて飲まねえ。そんなの人間がすることじゃねえもんな。
君はまだ自分のことを人だと。もはや人ではなくなった身だというのに、人の世の善悪に縛られる必要がどこにあるというのですか。
Heisuke glared deeply at Sana-san. But Sana-san didn't flinch or even react really in the slightest by Heisuke's gesture.
ですが、私とて人から羅刹に変じた身。今の君の動揺もわかります。どうしても血を飲むのが嫌だというのであれば、これを。
What's this?
松本先生が作ってくださった薬です。吸血衝動を抑える効能があるとか。
Really? I paused for a moment. Could such a thing really exist? But a muffled groan of pain from Heisuke brought me back to my senses. If it could help him, there was nothing to contemplate. Thank you, Sanan-san.
ただ覚えておいてください。その薬はあくまでもその場しのぎでしかありません。我々羅刹の苦しみは人の生き血を口にするまで続くのです。
Then he turned and walked off, but I had better things to do than watch him go. May I introduce to you round 1 and not even Nano Blossoms? Heisuke's hair had turned white again, and his eyes were now a deep red. He moaned in pain. I had to do something. I had to help him. And, as always, we gotta give him blood. Sana-san had been right about one thing. I couldn't possibly understand the pain Heisuke was feeling. I wasn't a fury. All I could do was watch him suffer. No, I could do more than that. My path was clear. I'm sorry, Heisuke. You said you wouldn't drink blood, but... The pain was so great he could barely speak. I didn't respond. Instead, I drew my kodachi and slit the blade across my arm.
お前何やってるんだよ。
Sana-san just said so, remember? Your pain will continue until you drink blood. Then...
だけど、どうしてお前がそこまで。
I can't bear to watch you suffer any longer. If he had to drink blood to live, then I wanted it to be my blood. My arm shook as I held it out to him. Please, this will heal immediately. And besides, I'm always being protected. Just once I want to help someone. If this is going to help you, that's all I ask for. The blood dripped from my arm like thick red tears. For a long moment, Heisuke simply stared at it. Then finally, he nodded.
申し訳なくて素直に喜べないけどさ。ありがとな。
Before long, the magistrate's office was in flames and we were forced to retreat. Even what was nearly a failure as well, the Imperial Army's weapons were far more advanced than anything we'd ever seen. And we didn't know how to counter them. Our retreat degenerated into chaos, and Heisuke and I found ourselves separated from the rest of the Shinsengumi. There was no way for us to know who else might have survived, but we both knew where those who had gone would go. What? But we both knew where those who had would go. Okay. Osaka Castle. Yoshinobu was there, as was Kondo-san. What other destination could there be? Heisuke and I choose to go through the forest and thereby avoid the Imperial Army, but it was January and the forest was dark and cold.
大丈夫か? 寒くねえか?
I'm fine. I had done my best not to cause any more worry for Heisuke, but it was a cold January and there was no lights out and we were surrounded by a freezing forest. We almost seemed imprisoned by the trees. All was still, and the only things moving were me and Heisuke paving the way ahead of me.
本当ならもう少し歩きやすい道を選ぶとこなんだけど、途中で薩長軍に見つかるわけにはいかねえし、我慢してくれよ。
I'm fine. Don't worry about me. What about you, Heisuke? Are you okay? You've been walking a lot too.
平気に決まってんだろ。俺町育ちだけど森の中も別に嫌いじゃねえし。
No. I mean your fury thing. He's been taken by the bloodlust during the battle of the magistrate's office, but since then he'd seemed fine. I need water. Blah. Still, there was no guarantee that it wouldn't happen again. In fact, it was very likely that it would, and that worried me. He must have felt my eyes on him, because he sighed and lowered his sword from hacking away the underbush.
あの後は血が欲しくなったりはしてねえよ。ただ、三男さんに関しては何とも言えねえかな。
Sanansa? He became a fury long before Heisuke, so he'd been dealing with the bloodlust much longer. How was he coping with it? Heisuke turned and looked at me, and I could see that the very same thoughts were going through his head. He leaned closer to me and spoke in a whisper, as if he were afraid someone might be listening in.
多分、三男さんは人の血を飲んでる。羅刹隊として動いてた夜、部下と一緒に敵を殺すついでにな。
What? Don't you think that's a little far-fetched?
羅刹隊が出た晩は毎回現場がひでえことになってたって聞かなかったか。あれは証拠を隠すために死体を切り刻んでたんだ、きっと。
Oh no. There was no denying that his argument made sense. I knew that there was something more to what Heisuke was saying, that he knew something, but I didn't want to believe it. I had only met and known Sanan-san from what I'd seen of him since first living with the Shinsengumi. And perhaps more importantly, I knew just how much the Shinsengumi captains trusted him.
今の俺にはわかるんだよ。なんせ誰も止めてくれなかったら、俺だって同じことをしかねねえんだからさ。油麹で死にかけた時さ、息が苦しくて、傷口が痛くて、目の前が暗くて、 幻滅するかもしれないけど、俺大義のためにはまだ死ねないみてえな立派な理由じゃなくて、ただあのまま何もしてねえうちに死ぬのが怖くて、それで落ち水に手を伸ばしたんだ。
The wind whipped his hair across his face, hiding it. I kept silent. Whatever his reason was for telling me all this, it probably wasn't to get me to give him advice.
でも羅刹になってまでこうやって生き延びたのに、今はまた落ち水なんて飲むべきじゃなかったんじゃねえかって思ってる。誰かの血をすすってまで生きる価値が俺にあるのかって思ったら、答えが見つからねえんだ。
He laughed again, but it was easily the saddest sound I'd ever heard.
自分で決めて伊藤さんについてった時だって、日の本のためにはこうするのが一番だってずっと自分に言い聞かせてたのに、結局伊藤さんが正しいのかどうか、それすらも途中からは分からなくなっちまって、新選組は坂本龍馬暗殺の犯人に仕立て上げるって聞いた時も、結局あの人を止められなかった。自分で決めた道なのにな。いつも後悔して迷ってやめたくなって、俺いつもこんなのばっかりなんだ。ほんと最低だよな。
You're not the only person who does that. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I reached for him, and when our hands met, I felt him shiver. I do, and I'm sure all the other guys have regretted their choices sometimes too. I'm sure everyone just doesn't show it. I felt him try to pull away, but my hand wrapped around his. Sometimes, all I can think about is the things I've done that I regret. There are days when I hate myself. His hand felt cold, and I gripped it tighter. He didn't pull away. When I was still in Edo, working at my father's clinic, I remember there being a patient who had an incurable illness. When they learned about their illness, they were desperately frustrated, only focusing on the pain and unfairness of it all. But one day, this person stopped saying those things. I remember they said, "This morning, I threw grains in the yard and sparrows came, and I found a beautiful flower in the yard." Whenever something good had happened, this person would talk about it. I think they realize that the good parts of life make living precious. I think that's how we get through life. I'm happy, you know. You might be a fury, but you're still alive. From the bottom of my heart, I'm glad Hamano Koji wasn't the last time we saw each other. I didn't want him to die, no matter what. Even if that meant he had to become a fury. Sorry. I guess I'm kind of selfish, huh? I knew how much pain you're dealing with, Heisuke, and yet I'm still happy. I wasn't sure if I could muster a good smile, but the smile I shared with Heisuke was the best one I could give him at the moment.
Honto wagamama da yo, omae wa sa. だから代わりに俺のわがままも一つ聞いてくれるか。
What are you talking about?
そばにいてほしいんだ。お前がそばにいてくれると俺すごく嬉しいから。
Does that mean... He didn't mean forever, did he? No, surely he meant until we were out of the forest. Or something. But my attempts to temper my expectations meant nothing to my heart, which beat rapidly against my chest. Are you sure? I mean, you're really suffering right now. I couldn't do anything to help you.
何もって。お前それ本気で言ってんのか。だとしたら鈍いにも程があるぜ。
I stared at him, dumbfounded, but he only laughed. After a moment, he looked at me and though his laughter faded, his grin did not.
ありがとな。お前がいなかったら、きっと俺とっくに狂ってると思う。
He let go of my hand and stood, then turned and held it out. This time, he was making the move. I felt happy, and I took his hand back.
さて、そろそろ行こうぜ。俺たちがいねえと、佐野さんや新八さんもみんなも寂しがるだろうしな。
It didn't matter how far away Osaka Castle was. So long as I was with Heisuke, everything would be alright. That was when I heard them.
いたぞ！幕府の敗残兵だ！
Heisuke!
分かってる。走るぞ！
Heisuke pulled me through the woods as the voices of our pursuers echoed behind us. The forest reflected the sound in such a way that at times it felt like we'd been surrounded. Heisuke gripped my hand tighter.
心配すんなって。俺がついてるし、森の中じゃ銃は当たんねえからさ。
Right. Eventually, the voices behind us began to fade. It seemed we finally lost them when a new problem appeared. Oh, fuck. A far, far worse problem. Oh, fuck.
もしやと思っていたが、ここで出会えるとはな。
風間に天霧！
What are you doing here? Two of the people I least wanted to see had been waiting for us, and we'd run right to them.
幕府との戦もそろそろ佳境を迎える頃合いだからな。俺の目の届かぬところでまかり間違って死なれては困る。何せそこの番犬は頼りにならぬことだしな。いつお前を守りきれずに逃げ出すかくたばるか知れたものではない。
ふざけんな！俺はこいつを置いて逃げたり、こいつだけ残して倒れたりなんてしねえよ！してたまるか！
He stepped between Kazuma and myself and reached for his sword.
風間、火星は必要ですか？
バカにしているつもりならば貴様とて容赦はせんぞ天霧。この俺がこのような寸足らずに遅れを取るとでも。
これは失礼を。
Heisuke leapt forward, not giving the demon time to finish. He moved so fast I could barely even see him, but Kazuma seemed to have no such difficulty.
その程度でこの俺に勝てるとでも思っているのか。
Kazuma calmly dodged Heisuke's attack.
くそ！
Their swords met with a metallic clang, and for a few seconds they fenced back and forth.
遅い。
Then, without a word, Kazuma simply grabbed Heisuke by the face. Oh.
そして弱い。この程度の力量ではどの道守りきれなくなるのも時間の問題だったな。1
He slammed Heisuke's head into the forest floor. Forest ground. God damn it. Into the ground.
2
Stop! Kazuma! Let go of Heisuke! I screamed out, straining my throat.
邪魔をするな。これもお前のしつけの一環だ。
Kazuma kicked me dead in the stomach and I slammed to the ground. Oh, now we use the word ground. God damn it.
3
Heisuke was covered in his own blood. Kazuma grabbed the neck of his kimono, then tossed Heisuke to the side as if he were a doll.
これで己の非力さを思い知ったな。ならばさっさと失せろ。
Heisuke! Heisuke! I grabbed a hold of his face, trying to shake him.
これくらいすぐ治るから。
Heisuke. My face was becoming hot and tears began to well in my eyes as I wiped the blood stains on his face. Just then,
さて、邪魔者は消えた。共に来てもらうぞ、雪村の娘。
No, I won't! I'll never do that!
ほう。どうやらまだ勝負はついていない様子ですね。私にあしらわれた時とは一味違うと見える。
何？
A streak of cold steel appeared out of nowhere and slipped across Kazuma's cheek, leaving behind a thin line of blossoming red. I followed the steel to its wielder.
貴様、まだ生きていたのか。
当たり前じゃねえか。あの程度でくたばってたまるかよ。
Heisuke, are you sure that you're okay? Your injuries look awful.
今まで迷って後悔しての繰り返しだった俺だけど、たとえ羅刹になってもお前を守りたい。その気持ちにだけは迷いも後悔もねえ。今はっきり分かったんだ。
The bruises Kazuma had given his face were already beginning to color, but he still looked heroic. Heisuke.
子犬ごときがまがいものの力を手に入れて図に乗ったか。よかろう。ならば今度は首をはね、その真の像を貫いてくれる。
やってみろよ。言っとくが、俺もただじゃ死なねえからな。
Kazuma lifted his sword again, fully prepared for battle this time. Heisuke, on the other hand, only stayed upright by leaning heavily on his sword. Before they could attack one another, a strong gust of wind swept across their battlefield.
まったくもう、今はそんなことしてる場合じゃないでしょ。まがいものって、そう呼ぶ相手にムキになる方が大人げないわよ。
Son? Kimikiku? What are you guys doing here?
東堂さんだったかしら。風間相手によく頑張ったわね。
どうしてあんた俺のことを知ってるんだ。お前の知り合いか。
That's right. Heisuke had never met either of them before.
貴様、ヤセの里に住まう女鬼か。
京に住む古き鬼が我々に何用です？
さすがお二人はご存知の様子。こちらにおわすお方は東にも西にも属さぬ古き京の鬼の血族。かの鈴鹿御前の直系にあたられる八瀬の姫君です。
鈴鹿御前. I couldn't make much of what they were saying, but from what I could tell, Sun was of a similar, possibly higher station than Kazuma.
鈴鹿御前の末裔が何の用向きだ。この俺に挨拶に来たのか。
なんでこの私があんたごときに挨拶に来なきゃならないのよ。今日こうしてわざわざ出向いたのは他でもないわ。鬼はあくまでも歴史の影。人の世界の祭りごとに関わってはいけないって掟を忘れたの？鬼の力を使って倒幕をなそうなんてもってのほかよ。無論彼女を奪い取るために新選組の人たちを傷つけることもね。
我々の振る舞いは鬼としての在り方に反するとおっしゃるわけですか？
我々とて倒幕がなった後まで薩摩藩の連中に手を貸してやるつもりはない。
たとえ近い将来手を引くとしても今までのあなた方の罪が消えるわけじゃないわ。場合によってはあなた方一族を子々孫々に至るまではぐれ鬼としなくてはならないかもしれない。その覚悟はできているのかしら。
Sun and Kazuma glared intensely at one another, each one aware of how capable the other was.
交換条件は何です？
簡単なことよ。彼女の身はこれから私たち八瀬一族が預かります。あなた方は今後一切手を出さないでちょうだい。そうすれば今まであなた方が人の歴史に関与していたことを見逃しましょ
う。なぜこの俺が貴様ごときの意向に従ってやらねばならぬのだ。
Kazuma laughed condescendingly towards Sun.
無礼者が斧が立場をわきまえよ。
Kazuma jerked as if he'd been struck. I could never have imagined that she could be so... The look she gave him was almost haughty. There were eyes of a demon princess looking dignified, opposite from her opposition conversant.
鬼の掟を破って人に手を貸し、人の世の歴史を大きく動かしたお前たちははぐれ鬼どころかお家断絶も十分にあり得る立場。そのお前たちの罪を見逃そうというのです。聞き届けぬというのであれば風間一族を鬼と認めることはできなくなる。それでも構わないというの。
Kazuma and Amagiri fell silent, grimacing quietly to themselves and gritting their teeth. Eventually,
言ってくれるが面白い。伊達に古き鬼の血を継いではいないということか。帰るぞ天霧。ここは引いてやることとしよう。
は
だが雪村の娘が自ら望んでこの俺のもとに嫁に来るというのであれば。
Kazuma, that is never happening.
貴様が感知する筋合いはなかろうな。古き鬼の末裔よ。
は？彼女が望んでって、あんた何勘違いしてるのよ。
Kazuma's smugness dropped, and whatever response he'd intended to give had changed.
命拾いしたな、鬼のまがいもの。今回は見逃してやるが、肝に銘じておけ。お前が醜く狂い果てるのであれば、その時こそ殺す。
The two demons turned, disintegrating into the darkness like spirits.
言ったみたいね。ひとまずこれでもう風間はあなたたちに手出しできないはずだと思うんだけど。
Thank you both for helping me.
私は姫様の命で動いていただけですので。それよりもお急ぎください。薩長軍の兵が近づいてきています。
そうだ、俺たち大坂城に行かなきゃならねえんだよな。
じゃあ積もる話はまた今度ってことにしましょう。二人は大坂城に行くの？
ああ、新選組のみんなもそこに向かってるはずだから。
おきく、この辺りの状況はどうなってるのかしら？
この先の淀藩は幕府を裏切ったそうですが、そこを抜けてしまえばさして困難もなく大坂城までたどり着けるでしょう。
Well, thank you again. Is there anything I can do for you?
そのお礼もまた今度ね。それじゃ行くわよ、おきく。
And with that, they disappeared into the woods. Without Sen and Kimigiku, I had no doubt that our encounter with Kazuma and Amagiri would have ended very badly. Our own safety assured, for the moment at least, I fell to wondering how the rest of the Shinsengumi had fared. One look at Heisuke confirmed that his thoughts mirrored mine. We need to get to Osaka as quickly as possible. Oh look, here we are. The forest paths to Osaka Castle were winding and arduous, requiring all my stamina to traverse. I had ended up far more exhausted by the end of it than I had expected to be. When we finally arrived to Osaka Castle to meet with the Shinsengumi men, I went to bed almost immediately, practically collapsing upon the futon. It was a huge relief to have a place in which to sleep, and when I awoke, it was evening already. I rushed to the great hall, but there wasn't anyone to be seen anywhere. Where's Heisuke and Hichikata-san? I was muttering to myself, almost half asleep still. Saito-san! Oh, it's so good to see you safe, Saito.
Yukimura, どうやらあんたも無事だったようで何よりだ。
Where is everyone? As soon as I got here, they told me to get some rest, so I wasn't able to see how everyone was doing. Is everyone safe?
全員が無事とは言い難いな。特に山崎は重傷を負ってかなり危険な状態だ。局長と宗司はあの戦いに参加していないから怪我の心配はないが、局長はともかく宗司の病状は良くはない。
I see.
それに源さんは。
I heard about Inoue almost as soon as we'd arrived.
そうか。
The news about Inoue was waiting for us as Heisuke and I met with everyone. To think that the sight of his warm smile or the peaceful sound of his voice would no longer be things in which I could take solace broke my heart. To top it off, too, Yamazaki was badly hurt. Saito-san, what's going to happen to the Shinsengumi?
大使が少しずつこの大坂城に集まっている。人数が揃えば江戸に戻ることになるだろう。だからあんたも 今のうちに体を休めておくといい。
Understood. Did you see Heisuke?
平助か。先ほど一人で外に出て行ったようだが。
What? But the sun's still out. I'm worried, so I'm going to check on him. Ever since Heisuke had become a fury, his mood often fluctuated extremely, even in talking to me. I wasn't comfortable leaving Heisuke alone, so after Saito-san gave me the go-ahead, I bowed and I walked outside to find Heisuke. As I went past the castle's inner court, I witnessed a beautiful sunset above the castle walls. Near the wall, bathed in amber light, I saw Heisuke.
Ah.
He was standing there, letting his body soak in the red warmth of the setting sun, and he gazed quietly towards the cloud formations above.
Yo, ohayo-san. この時間でおはようっつうのも変だけどさ。
Well, I just woke up, so I think morning is fitting. Heisuke, are you alright? Isn't the sunlight bad for your body? As I'd expressed my worry with him, Heisuke shared with me a warm smile.
辛くないっつうと嘘になるかな。今も夕日が俺の目を焼いてる。体もピリピリしびれが走るし、さっきから少し吐き気もしてるよ。
That is so weird, Heisuke. Then why are you staying out here?
体の痛みなんてどうにでもなるって。本当に怖いのは世界が今までと違って見えることなんだ。
Different?
お前にはさ、ここから見える夕日、綺麗に見えるだろ？俺もそうだ。いや、そうだった。でも、今はもう、この夕日の赤より、血の赤の方が綺麗に見える。それがたまらなく怖い。
Heisuke。
そんな心配そうな顔すんなって。確かに身も心も痛いけど、今ならその痛みにも立ち向かえる気がするんだ。
え？
お前がそばにいるからだよ。
As he said this, he seemed to blush a little, turning to the side to avoid eye contact. It didn't seem like he wanted to go back in yet. He stood there, watching the warm hues fill the sky, and I sauntered next to him. Although we are looking at the same setting sun, he and I are seeing different things. Thinking about what had become of us made my heart a little heavy, so I reached for his hand, cold to the touch to hold. Heisuke's heart won't lose to the fury. So, just like in the forest, we clasped our hands tightly together, gazing into the evening sky. Although I felt powerless, I had felt that, if I were to stay by his side, the future was still worth looking forward to, and it brought me warmth. We watched the sun dip into the horizon, and eventually the rising moon as the night came to visit. As the moon ascended into the gray clouds above, Heisuke stared into the light and chuckled.
ああ、なんだかんだでやっぱり夜の方が気分いいな。
I like the night as well.
俺ももともと夜更かしとか好きだったからな。よく新八さんや佐野さんと夜通し遊んだりしてたし。
Keep that at a minimum, alright?
言っとくけど、そういう時は大抵あの二人の誘いで仕方なくついてったんだって。
I have a feeling that if I asked them, they'd tell me you were the one that invited them. The three of you are such good friends. No, it wasn't just the three of them. All of the Shinsengumi captains seemed to share a bond that connected them like they were all family. I wish I could stay with the Shinsengumi for a little longer.
そうだな。でも、新選組はこれからどうなるかわからない。
True. There's really no telling how the war will turn out. Also, we have no way of knowing what Kazuma will do after everything's said and done.
なあ。もしまたあいつらが来ても、それに他にどんなことがあっても、俺が守ってやるって言いたいけどさ。あいつらは今の俺より強いし、俺に何があるかもわからない。
He squeezed my hand tighter as he lamented the possibilities. With a quiet gaze, he stared into my eyes.
この闇と同じだよ。俺たちの進む道は先のことなんて見えやしない。俺と一緒に歩いてくってのは、この闇の中を共に歩いていくってことだ。一歩先も見えない中を手探りで。
ヘスケ。
こんな俺についてこいなんて言えやしないけど。
His hand was trembling in mine. Heisuke wasn't afraid of fighting, but rather he was afraid he couldn't protect those whom he'd held dear. And it filled me with happiness to know that the person he'd held close to his heart was me, so I grabbed his hand with both of mine. I want to follow wherever you go. I decided this a long time ago. I want to be by your side. But let me say this. I'm not going with you because I want your protection. I'm going with you because I want to be by your side, to walk in the same world as you. That's why I want us to be together. Heisuke blushed bright red, perhaps caught off guard.
そうか。うん。そうだよな。お前の言う通りだ。それにお前はさ、守られてばかりの女ってわけじゃないもんな。
Well, on the battlefield, it seems like I don't need much, no.
はは、そういう意味じゃないって。
Heisuke laughed.
ありがとな。やっぱお前がいるだけですげえ元気になれる気がするよ。
That's so? Good. I'm happy to hear it.
まあ、さっきは弱気なこと言っちまったけど、今度もし風間が来たとしても、俺が絶対に追い返してやるし。お前はあんな奴のもんじゃなく、俺のなんだって言ってやるから。
Damn! The passion in Heisuke's declaration made me blush. But it was fine. When Heisuke's happy, I'm happy. Alright, Heisuke. Wanna head back soon?
うん、そうっすか。結構冷えてきたし。
We were soon engulfed in darkness around us, and it was a little tough to find our way back. We should be careful, I muttered softly, and when I looked up at Heisuke, he was looking back at me. What's the matter, Heisuke?
いや、少し変なこと考えてただけだ。暗くて進む道なんて見えやしないけど、隣にいるお前の顔はよく見えるなって。
え？
さて、行って飯でも食おうぜ。森の中じゃまともなもん食べてなかったし。
I think everyone's waiting for us to come back. We gripped each other's hands even tighter as we walked back towards Osaka Castle. This war later became known as the Battle of Toba Fushimi. Throughout the war, the shogunate troops had the advantage in numbers, but they were no match against the Sacho, who successfully employed advanced weapons and Western tactics to gain the upper hand. Allegedly, the deciding moment was the arrival of the gold brocade flag, which represented their alliance and backing of the imperial palace. When Lord Yoshinobu had discovered this had happened, he decided to retreat to Edo. At this point, the war became pointless to those serving the shogunate once their leader had left. The prospect of defeat is what moved the last remnants of the shogunate and the Shinsengumi to leave Osaka Castle for Edo. Final chapter! Boat time! On January 10th, our ship was set to sail from the dock. The past wars, our future. These thoughts made me unable to sleep, and I constantly sifted through them alone in bed. So to calm my restlessness, I went to the dock.
あれ、どうしたんだ？こんな夜遅くに。
That should have been the word deck, shouldn't it? こんばんは、平助。I couldn't shut my eyes for more than a second.
そっか。まあ、いろいろあったもんな。
Indeed. Our conversation took a pause, and the sound of crash waves filled the space in our silence. Heisuke watched the water move below him, and he spoke gently.
もうすぐ5年になるんだな。
ん？
俺たちが江戸から京に出てきてだよ。京に出てくる前の司令官ってすっげえ貧乏でさ、明日の飯にも困るぐらいで、なのにしょっちゅう安酒飲みながらみんなで今の政治はおかしいって言い合ってたんだ。そんな時、浪士組募集の話を聞いて一も二もなく飛びついたよ。これで飯の心配をしなくてもよくなる。みんなとずっと一緒にいられるってな。
I could picture the image vividly as he described the bunch of them together. If it was anything like I'd seen of them in Kyoto, they'd be trading banter back and forth, having the time of their lives every day.
江戸にいた頃は尊王攘夷だってみんな言ってたんだけど、京に行ったら逆に尊上浪士を捕まえる側になっちまってさ。近藤さんや土方さんは侍になるってことだけで頭がいっぱいだったみてえだし、新八さんや佐野さんはまあみんなと一緒にいられればそれでいいって感じだったのかな。そんな時、幕府の命令であの薬の研究をすることになって、俺はそのことをずっとおかしいって思ってて、他のみんなみてえに割り切ることなんてどうしてもできなくてさ。御領英治になってからさ、伊藤さんに言われたんだ。あんな薬の研究を押し付けてくる幕府に尽くしていて、本当に報われる日が来ると思っているのって。そりゃそうだよなってその時は思ったけど、だからって伊藤さんが言ってることが全部正しいってわけじゃなかったんだよな。
The sense of anguish and conflict inside of Heisuke must have been bubbling for quite some time. Not only to decide what was right for him, but how he could go about making it so. There aren't many people in the world who are able to navigate this issue sensibly.
人一人ができることにはきっと限りがあるんだろうな。俺はいつの間にか身の丈に合わねえようなことをしようとしちまってたんだ。
ヘスケ。
それでその後油麹で死にかけて、まだ死にたくねえって思いだけで羅刹になっちまって、夜にしか動けなくて、切られても撃たれても死なねえ体になって、人を殺してその血を浴びて、血が欲しくて体が震えちまって、とうとう化け物になっちまったと思ったけど、でもお前がいてくれた。
Under the starry night, Heske smiled shyly. It was a fleeting smile, one so delicate it felt at any moment like it could float into the night.
ありがとうな。お前がいてくれて本当によかった。
No need to thank me. It was quite the contrary. I think I have Heske to thank for his boundless energy and kindness. When I was first brought to the compounds, I remember him timidly telling me that he'd hoped the Shinsengumi would let me go. I remember it fondly.
だから、今なら自分が何をするべきか分かるような気がするんだ。天下国家とか、この日の本の未来とか、そんな大それたものじゃなくて、俺自身が守りたいもの、大切なもののためにこの力を使おうって。
Heisuke looked at me peacefully.
約束する。俺はもう新選組の8番組組長でも御領絵師でもない。表向きは死んだことになってる人間だ。羅刹になった以上、新選組とは切っても切れねえ関係になっちまったけど、お前を守りてえって気持ちだけは変わってない。これから先もずっと。
His voice shook so faintly that it was nearly overpowered as the waves crashed behind us. But Heisuke's eyes told me everything that I'd needed to hear. Thank you, Heisuke. My hair was blowing beside the endless sea. I smiled kindly, our eyes twinkling in moonlight. And we finish Heisuke's route! How do I feel? I really like this one. I knew there was a reason why I instinctively went Chizuru and Heisuke are the best option as a couple. And like, yeah, this is it. It was cute in some places. I love that Heisuke struggles. They make Heisuke struggles between his beliefs and everything, and then makes him lose his way, and then he realizes, you know what? I'm gonna give myself my own purpose that has nothing to do with anything that's actually going on, but I will protect this girl that I absolutely love. And the fact he was the one that realized it at first, before Chizuru even had that thought in her mind. I like it. Now, I don't know what's gonna go on in part 2, because I've never touched it, so that'll be something to witness. Oh, Carrot House! There's Carrot House! Carrot House is the recording studio. That is such a name. Carrot House. is just I think Heisuke's route is gonna be the sweet one. That's how I feel anyway. But I guess Part 2 will show us things. Hey, Idea Factory, can you do me a favor and localize the games that are on Switch? Please? Thank you! I'd love it! Give it to me! I need them, and I need them to be localized. Because there's too much shit that had been put into those games. You've added so much content that I don't even think the wiki has kept up with it, with what's in there. January 1868. The Battle of Toba-Fushimi ended with the Sacho victorious. As the shogunate troops retreated, the Shinsengumi headed towards Edo. 4 years ago, I came to Kyoto all by myself in search for my father and met the Shinsengumi. I'm going to leave the city of Kyoto, where I made fond memories with the Shinsengumi. Despite the defeat, his resolve didn't waver, and I have chosen to walk alongside him. We're going to head to Edo, without knowing what fate awaits us. Now we have one more thing, just one more thing, and then I'm gonna go and eat something before we come back at 8 p.m. EST for a charity art stream. I'm excited and I might regret it because I have some incentives. Anyway, if I'm correct, yes, we do have DLC for Heisuke. Let's go. When is this? When is this? Give me... Oh, okay, so this is right at the start of the game, alright. In August, so after Ikeda, I think. A month, yeah. So I think this is after Ikeda, before Hamaguri. A month had passed since the Ikeda incident, where the Shinsengumi had rescued the city of Kyoto from being engulfed in flames. Yes. That's odd. Where did Heisuke run off to? I came out here to tell him that it's almost time for him to apply his ointment. Oh, Heisuke, there you are.
Get.
Oh, he's actively running away from us. Huh? What's with the... Oh, crap. I found your ointment, but I couldn't find you to apply it, so I was worried about you.
いや、傷はほとんど治っちまったからもう薬はいいって。
Oh, you know it's not going to heal that easily. It hasn't even been half of a month.
俺、傷の治りは結構早い方だからさ、心配はいらねえから。
No, Heisuke. What are you going to do if it gets infected, or worse, starts festering? Especially with the humidity recently. Don't underestimate these scars. If you do, then it might become more serious.
それは分かってるけどさ。
Now stop resisting me and show me the wound. I'm going to put something on it to help.
薬なら自分で塗るって。
No, I know you're not as thorough as I am when you rub it.
たく医者の娘だけあってこういうことにはうるせえんだな、お前。
Bitch, you're getting this ointment and you're going to behave. We returned to the common room and had Heisuke unwrap his bandages to show me the wounds. Okay, no signs of any infection. So I'm just going to put some aloe here.
その薬すっげえしみるんだよな。他の薬はねえの？
I do, but this is the best thing I have at making open wounds close up faster. You know, for doctors, they usually say that the more the ointment stings, the better it's working on your skin.
だといいんだけどな。
Now stay put. I dabbed some more of the ointment onto my fingertips from a seashell! God damn it. Seashell, where it was being stored, to rub it onto Heisuke. Sorry, just bear with me for a second longer.
わかってる。なるべく一気に終わらせてくれ。
Alright, that should be it. Wow, you did great there, Heisuke.
ガキあやすみてえな言い方やめてくれって。俺お前より年上なんだぞ。
I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. It's just really easy for me to talk to you, Heisuke. It doesn't feel like you're older. Oh, I know. Here you go. This is for your obedience. What? God damn. Back in Edo, whenever one of our child patients had to visit us, we always make sure to give them a candy like this one.
あのな、だからそういうのが。
Sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. Did I? What? Sorry, I didn't mean to offend you.
いや、別にいいけどさ。
Heisuke puckered his lips as he pouted, but then he unwrapped the candy and popped it into his mouth. Sorry.
何度も謝らなくてもいいって。確かに俺、佐野さんとかはじめくんに比べればガキっぽいし。
Oh, so he admits it.
薬を塗られるの嫌がって逃げ回るなんて、ガキくせえって思われてもしょうがねえもんな。
It's not like that.
いいんだよ。これでも自覚はしてるんだから。これからはもう少し考えねえとな。これからもずっとお前にガキ扱いされるのは尺に触るし。
What?
なんでもねえから気にすんな。そんじゃ俺、巡察の支度をしなきゃならねえから。
Oh, be careful.
おう、そんじゃな。
And with that, Heisuke quickly gathered himself and rushed out of the common room. I never meant to treat him like he was a child, though. It seemed like I might have bothered Heisuke, so maybe in the future I should be a little more careful. Okay, now we're done. That took 6 minutes. So, like I said before, 8 p.m. EST, we're starting our stream a little bit early today. It's a charity stream, so if you want to come on by and maybe donate a little, that'd be fine. There's also incentives where I get to just basically blow out my vocal cords if you want to hear me sing some songs. I usually don't sing for the public, but I might do it for charity, so if you really want to do that, that's fine as well. Otherwise, tomorrow, 3 p.m. EST, we're gonna come back, but with Edo Blossom, to continue Heisuke's route and see what happens, because I have 0 clue. So with that, drink water, don't die, have a nice day or night, and I'll see you guys in just a couple of hours. Bye-bye!